Happy Tuesday and welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we are racked and stacked with a loaded show. Tons to get to. Of course, we got some great guests, as we always do. Yogi Roth going to join us. We'll talk a lot of quarterbacks, college stuff with Yogi. John Fanta going to join us, the great John Fanta. We'll talk some college ball with him. And we'll check in on where he is with his beloved Cleveland Browns. And, of course, Tom Haberstroh going to join us. So we are all over the place. We've got you covered everywhere you could possibly be covered. But, Caroline, let's start with a little bit of the fallout from the weekend that was, because certainly we have 2 weeks to get ready for the Super Bowl. We will be in San Francisco all week next week. But right now I'm thinking about the teams that aren't headed to the Super Bowl. Cover your ears, Rams fans, particularly if you're still sensitive after the loss over the weekend, because I'm trying to piece together what the future of the LA Rams actually looks like. Let's remember, it's not that long ago that the Rams were preparing for a Super Bowl, and everybody was talking about, is McVay going to retire? Is Aaron Donald going to retire? Is Stafford going to retire? Then we spent all of this offseason talking about, does Stafford want out? Is Stafford going to retire? Do the Rams need to move on? Does he have a bad back? Like, when I start looking at this entire equation, Caroline, and I look at the Rams, I think piece number one that we need to have an answer for at some point, and we won't get it quickly, is what's Matt Stafford going to decide to do?
That is the first domino to fall for this Rams team. That is everything. I think what Matthew Stafford decides to do with his future, does he retire? Does he come back next year? That dictates the entirety of the Rams offseason. If Matthew Stafford decides to hang it up, who's quarterbacking the Rams? I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent this offseason. You're going to run it back with Jimmy G? Oh, I know we got to the NFC Championship game. I know that we were just one play away potentially from punching our ticket to the Super Bowl. But you know what we're going to give to all of our fans after just falling short? Jimmy Garoppolo. No, of course not. So that's the number one question. If Matthew Stafford decides to hang it up, who is their quarterback? Sure, you could take a swing on Ty Simpson in the draft. Kalen DeBoer's offense is very similar to Sean McVay's offense. Sean McVay wants to throw the football. Ty Simpson was Alabama's offense this past year. But is that because Ty Simpson is the future and is the solution for the Rams? He's the next one. Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Ty Simpson? Or is it just, hey, look, we need some sort of hope for the future at that position, so we'll just take a swing on a guy who has a first-round grade, or has a third-round grade, but is going to go in the first round because of supply and demand? So that's a big question mark. What does Sean McVay do if Matthew Stafford decides to retire?
I think that's the other complicated, like, there are so many variables here, because certainly, number one, I want to stress this. Matthew Stafford should have the right to take as long as he wants to take to make a decision, right? Like, we all know that. But that man right there, Sean McVay, is going to be impacted by whatever that decision is. Now, I have a hard time thinking, okay, Stafford's going to take months. He's going to decide he wants to step away, and then suddenly McVay's like, I'm out, right? Like, it feels like that isn't something that we really associate with coaches. But again, a couple of years ago, we were talking about, does Sean McVay want to retire? And I remember a key, as he was talking about leading up to that Super Bowl, was acknowledging he was about to have a kid and saying, hey, you know, the grind of the hours, I want to be around my family, all of these different things. Well, we just found out that Sean had a second kid right as the playoffs started. So now he has 2 kids under 2 years old. How does that impact the decision-making? How does the quarterback situation impact it? And to your point, I think what's hard here is that there isn't a clear, set, easy answer. Something we've said on this show that bears repeating, we'll say it over and over and over again, is the free agent quarterback class for next year looks awful. So if your answer to getting the quarterback solved is to look at free agency, there's going to be a bidding war for Malik Willis, because he's the only name that's even out there. So you're talking about a bidding war. Malik is going to get overpaid because, A, it's free agency, and B, multiple teams need a quarterback of some sort. C, he's the only real guy. So Malik Willis is out. Are you going to get into a bidding war for a multi-year deal for Malik? That doesn't feel like that makes sense even in Sean McVay's offense. And then to your point, if you're taking Ty Simpson, maybe you're taking a flyer on Ty, but you're going to have to use a high pick on him, because even though he doesn't have a first-round grade to many people, he's the only other quarterback in this draft that feels like he could play at some point right now. So I just feel like the hard part for the Rams is they don't know what Matthew Stafford's decision is going to be. So they don't know how long they're going to have to develop somebody. They don't know how that's going to impact their front office. They don't know what that's going to mean for their coaching strategy. They don't know how that impacts their roster. All of these don't knows at the most important position in sports. It's a testament to Sean McVay that we just give benefit of the doubt that the Rams will work this out. But the fact is, the Rams took Stetson Bennett in the draft a few years ago for a reason. They knew they were going to have to start developing someone. It just turns out that from the outside looking in hasn't really turned into something for them, Caroline. So I think part of this is that they just haven't been in a good position to try and get a developmental project that they could work on. And now it feels like they are at least teetering on the edge of stuck unless Stafford decides he's going to stay for a couple years. They're in a weird situation where they don't get an answer at this position.
And I don't have any problem with an organization acknowledging that their Super Bowl window is squarely open and doing whatever they have to do to capitalize on that window. Saying, look, right now in 2020, just, retrospectively looking, hey, at 2024, we can't worry about 2027. We have to worry about 2025. We have to worry about how do we get back to the Super Bowl? How do we win another championship? How do we capitalize on our quarterback playing some of the best football of his career? How do we capitalize on Puka Nacua playing like one of the best receivers in the National Football League? How do we capitalize on a defense that has been a massive impact for our team? I do understand that when you are in a window, you can only think about the right now. Worry about 2028 and 2028. Worry about 2030 and 2030. That was where the very famous F them picks came from. Because they said, we don't care about the future. We care about the right now. And normally, as somebody who values the draft and values drafting and developing talent, the moniker of F them picks makes me just nauseous, makes me sick to my stomach. But it worked. Saying F them picks not only put the Rams in a Super Bowl contending window at the time, but with the picks that they did have, they hit on them and they developed those players. So they're able to have young, relatively inexpensive players to supplement the big money players that they added in the F them picks era. So the Rams have done a really masterful job of keeping a window that maybe felt small at the time open for an extended period of time. So if Matthew Stafford does decide to come back, and frankly, Fitz, I don't know if this is just based off of vibe or just my own feeling, I don't think Matthew Stafford is stepping away. I think it would be really hard to swallow moving on from a career after you had the best year of your career. If Matthew Stafford wins MVP, does he really feel like he can wake up the next day and say, I'm done? Maybe he does. Maybe he feels like he checked all of the boxes that he wanted to check in his career. I just cannot fathom stepping away at a time like that. But if I'm the Rams, I say, look, if Matthew Stafford comes back, we feel like we have a roster that's fit to compete. We feel like we have a coaching staff that's one of the best in the country. We have to capitalize on the right now.
I actually totally agree. I think there'd be a bigger shot of Stafford walking away, weirdly, in my mind, if the Rams had won the Super Bowl. Like, if the Rams had won the Super Bowl, I think there might have been do you go out on top? You're an MVP, you win a Super Bowl. Does McVay go out on top? Everybody says it doesn't get better than this. Like, I could see all of that.
Yeah.
When you get as close as they got, but you didn't actually get the ring, I do wonder, especially because, to your point, I mean, I know he went through some physical stuff even in this season, but we forgot about the back injury over the course of the year. We watched Matt Stafford play some of the best football of his career. And right now, even though they have some big numbers coming, as you saw a tweet earlier, the Rams have a ton of cap space relative to where they are competitively. They have money that they can spend. They still have great talent around them. They still have Sean McVay. And as has been pointed out many times, they have 2 first-round picks because of the trade with Atlanta. They got Atlanta up where they wanted to be. The Rams own the 13th pick in the draft this year. So they own the 13th pick from Atlanta and also their 29th pick. What's funny to me, I should say, I've been lucky enough in my career to cover the NFL draft every single year of it. From the year I got to ESPN to now, I've been able to do draft shows every year. I love the draft. So to me, when I look at this as a draft nerd, I say the Stafford decision will greatly impact what the Rams do at the draft as well. If your argument is they're going to sit there and try and get Ty Simpson, I would just remind you that right now, if Ty Simpson, we're early in this process, so we haven't even had the scouting combine yet, but the team's picking ahead of the Rams that need a quarterback in our eyes. If Ty Simpson were to get overdrafted, the Jets, Arizona, Cleveland, Miami, all sitting ahead. So there's at least 4 teams ahead. if there feels like there's going to be a run on Ty Simpson, all of those teams could try and take a quarterback, or teams could try and trade up. The weird thing to me is that while we sit here today and say fix the quarterback, if you know Stafford's coming back, I wonder if the Rams actually try and move out of some of these draft picks, wait for next year and get as much ammunition as they possibly can, hopeful they can get somebody next year. Again, you can't outsuck the rest of the NFL, so that's not a great proposition. But Caroline, I just think it gets really interesting because I'm not sure the Rams can truly do anything with a plan this offseason until they hear from Matthew Stafford. I also think that it's only fair to Matthew Stafford that he have time to sit down with his wife, and that he has time to sit down with his family, and that he has time to see how his body feels, and that he has time to let, the loss in the NFC Championship game sort of roll off of his body, and then figure out without as much emotion how he feels about playing next year. So I want to be really clear. You got to honor Matthew Stafford's process in figuring it out. It's almost like those old choose your own adventure books. Like the Rams got to write a bunch of different chapters. And then the minute Stafford says what he wants, like, all right, turn to page 72. Like the Rams are going to have a contingency plan for literally everything. And by the way, organizationally, I think they're smart enough to do that. Like I cannot stress this enough. The Rams are where they are because they're a really well-run organization.
Mm-hmm. And they're a really well-run organization with one of the best coaches in the National Football League. And I don't think they're going to force Matthew Stafford to make any sort of decision, nor do I feel like the Rams would make any sort of reactive decision based on what Matthew Stafford decides to do. If Sean McVay views Ty Simpson as the future franchise quarterback with the Rams, they should do whatever it takes to get him. But if he doesn't, don't overdraft him. Don't take him with the 13th pick in the draft. Don't take him with the 29th pick in the draft. Ty Simpson sitting there in the 5th round? Sure, why not take a flyer on him just like they did with Stetson Bennett? But regardless of what Matthew Stafford decides to do with his future, you don't draft a quarterback just to say that you drafted a quarterback. You do everything in your power to get the best player that is available to you. Because right now, the Rams need corners. I look at 3 corners and this year's draft with first-round grades: Jermon McCoy from Tennessee, Avion Terrell from Clemson, and Mansour Delane from LSU. I look at the Rams right now. I mean, they're on the hook for $28 million for Davante Adams next year. Davante Adams has a hamstring issue. You want to commit $28 million to an aging receiver with a hamstring issue? Or do you maybe want to take a crack at one of these receivers that you can take with one of your 2 picks in the first round? So I think the Rams just have to approach this in a very smart way, which I trust the Rams to do because they are a very well-run organization. But to your point, the way that you approach everything that you do this offseason has everything to do with Matthew Stafford.
There's always a team that late in the process of the offseason, we wake up and say, holy cow, what are they doing? I wonder, the Rams, it could go one of 2 ways. That being said, if I had to bet my house, I bet my house that they run it back. It was too good this year not to give it another shot. And selfishly, we all want more Rams Seahawks for the next several years. That's the rivalry we need to continue growing. All right, that's the Rams side from the fallout of the weekend. What about the AFC side of it? We'll take a look at that next. What's next for the Denver Broncos now that their season has come to an end? We'll answer that question.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to this.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knipple and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see, he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knipple. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70, and then like the air went out of the ball for a month, and it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
I just ordered a lifetime supply for Bo Nix so his bones never break again. That from friend of the show, Brandon Perna. Absolutely hysterical. And look, I get this. And, you know, this is a moment. I have a very human moment here because I think a lot of times people see me as a Raiders fan and think that I root outright, you know, for the demise of all of my enemies, including the Denver Broncos. Look, I'm never going to root for the Denver Broncos. Let's be clear, Caroline. But I don't think there's anything more heartbreaking than the what might have been losses. Not lose. Like sometimes you lose in a big game, you get your ass kicked, and forever you sit there and say, can't believe we didn't show up in that situation. Broncos fans, for the rest of time, this generation right now of Broncos fans, in 30 years, will still be talking about the moment that Bo Nix went down and the fact that they lost the AFC Championship game at home by 3 with their backup quarterback. That is the sort of kick in the no-no places I literally wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So when we look at what's next for the Denver Broncos, the very simple answer to what's next for the Denver Broncos is putting Bo Nix in bubble wrap. I don't know. Like this is the sort of loss that it feels like will linger for fans and will linger for players and will linger for the organization for a second because this one just hurts different.
I am very much so of the belief that it hurts far worse to be so close and just fall short by an inch than it is to just be so far away. You know, what breakups hurt the worst? The ones with people that you didn't even really like that much, or the ones that you thought were the one that you invested years of your life into? It's always going to be the latter. You know, from my perspective as a Saints fan, everyone in New Orleans still talks about the 2019 NFC Championship game. The PI no call. What could have happened? Still, every single year at Mardi Gras, they have people dressed up like NFL referees throwing out, you know, yellow flags to people that are watching the parades. It is always going to be the ones where you get so incredibly close. And there's kind of two ways of looking at it. The one way of looking at it is, you know, this was an epic failure. I can't believe Sean Payton would decide to go for it on 4th and 1. Looking at the weather forecast, you have your backup quarterback and so on and so forth. Or you can look at the way that the Denver Broncos are constructed and say, they have all of the makings of being right back here next year. When I look at this Broncos roster, I don't think that there's any sort of massive, huge, sweeping changes that are necessary in order for the Broncos to get back into this position next year or in the years prior and eventually find themselves in the Super Bowl. I think there's just a couple of additions and a couple of tweaks here and there from being right back into this position. Sean Payton talked about how they had too many drops. So I'll take Sean Payton's word for it. Need to go out and get some better receivers. Need to go out and get some better go-to options for Bo Nix. Because as good as this Broncos team was, who was their go-to? Like when your back's up against the wall, when it's 3rd and 5, when you've got 2 minutes left in the 4th quarter and you're down 4, who is your go-to guy? I don't know. I really don't know that about the Denver Broncos. I would love for them to either draft that go-to guy or find someone in free agency who's seen a lot of football and played a lot of football and kind of be that go-to guy for Bo Nix. But overall, Fitz, I look at this roster and also retaining Vance Joseph. Do whatever it takes. Pay the man whatever he wants. Give him whatever he wants to keep Vance Joseph in the building. But I don't think the Broncos need some massive facelift to keep this window open.
No, I actually agree with you. I think, look, they could use some weapons. They could use some real help in the running game. Health was part of that. J.K. Dobbins missing so much towards the end absolutely impacted them. They couldn't get a lot of offensive rhythm. But I looked back at the last decade of AFC Championship games just to take a look at what happens to the loser of the AFC Championship game. more years than not. And the funny thing is, if we take the Kansas City Chiefs in the last decade have twice won the AFC or lost the AFC Championship game, come back the next year and gone to the Super Bowl. So they are the shining example of you can get right back. No team not named Kansas City in the last decade has lost an AFC Championship game and even gotten back to the game the next year. So it's funny because as we sit here right now, it's certainly easy to say, oh my God, the Broncos are going to be right back in it. There are so many variables to that, especially because the AFC West is not built for the weak at heart. Like, look, the Chargers, everything that could go wrong for the Chargers went wrong for the Chargers this year, and they still made the playoffs. I get it. That's the theme every year. The Chargers are banged up. The Chargers are hurt, but they need to figure out what energy field is around the Chargers organization because their injuries are through the roof every single year. I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you fix Justin Herbert in the playoffs. I get that. But the Chargers were still in the playoffs with all of the issues that they had. And then there's the Chiefs, and frankly, I'm not willing to call the Chiefs dead right now. I think the Chiefs are sort of like Michael Myers. Like, yeah, you threw him out the window, and yeah, you saw him laying on the ground, but when you went back a couple minutes later, they weren't there anymore. Like, I'm not going to presume that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are left for dead. So if you're the Broncos, you're looking around and saying, as great as this year was, you had to win a lot of games down the stretch in really unique fashion. We'll say it that way. You had to come back over and over and over again. Is that sustainable year in and year out? Historically, it's not. You're in a division that has Mahomes. You're in a division that has Herbert. You're in a division that has some really great coaches. I feel like because the AFC West is stacked and because the Broncos just had the season they had, I'm not willing to presume it's as easy as rinse and repeat and they're back. They're going to have to make some improvements. But the main improvement that they can bank on is that Bo Nix is going to continue to get better. We talked a lot over the course of the season, Caroline. Like, Bo Nix in clutch time has been absolutely incredible. Bo Nix had to be incredible in clutch time because he wasn't always incredible when it wasn't clutch time. So I think it's okay to acknowledge this is a quarterback that's still developing into the best version of who he's going to be. Like, Bo Nix is not one of those overnight successes to me. Bo Nix is one of those work in progress guys that's getting better each year. That's something you can build on. But I think the growth of Bo combined with some better offensive weapons could absolutely take Denver to the next step. They're going to have to, though, because everything around them continues to improve.
I will always go back to Dan Campbell's post-game press conference from last year's postseason. And he said, look, there's no guarantee that we're going to get back here. It's really difficult to win in the National Football League. And we were looking at that Lions team, with Jared Goff and the best 1-2 punch at the running back position and Aiden Hutchinson defensively. And we knew that they were going to get healthier in the 2025 season. And I remember thinking, like, yeah, I understand that. I hear Dan Campbell, but this team's just far too good to regress. The Lions weren't even in the postseason. So I do always think about that whenever we're projecting forward, because the Broncos do feel like they have all of the pieces to, get right back where they were this past season. That they this defense with Bo Nix the way that he is in the clutch. But the Chiefs aren't going to miss the postseason next year. There's no way. The Chargers had a ton of unfortunate injuries that derailed their season. And Fitz, I will look at your Raiders with a glass half full. I love Fernando Mendoza, and I think Fernando Mendoza is going to make the Raiders far more interesting than they were this past season, at least. I will give you that. So that's another thing, is I do believe that there is a certain element of luck in every championship run. That's not a bad thing, Patriots fans, okay? Everyone's got a little bit of luck. The Chiefs were lucky that they won so many of those one-score games. The Rams, when they got to the Super Bowl in 2019, were lucky that they didn't get that PI call. There is a little bit of luck stitched in with every single piece of fabric of a championship season. The Broncos were a little bit lucky this year that the Chiefs were pretty bad. The Broncos were a little bit lucky that the Chargers offense sputtered so much from their offensive line injuries. How much luck will you have surrounding you in your division moving forward? That's one little gray storm cloud surrounding the Broncos. But as far as the Broncos are concerned, you can only control what you can control. You can't control the division. You can't control Patrick Mahomes. You can't control Joe Alt coming back and getting healthy. What you can control is keeping your brain trust in the building and supplementing your roster and helping your young quarterback and giving him skill position players.
Well, and to that end, you're 1,000% right. If I had told you a year ago, by the way, Eagles not going to be a factor, Lions not going to be a factor, Ravens, Bills, Chiefs not going to be a factor. We have historically one of the most unlikely, according to odds, Super Bowl matchups in history this year. So it's super easy for every Broncos fan to sit there and say, we're back, we're going to be just fine. It doesn't usually turn out that way. So certainly I'm not going to bet against the Broncos this early in the process, but it's just a reminder that you're right. For years, it felt like there was a Super Bowl hangover. Right now, it feels like there's a bit of a championship game hangover in some ways with the way those teams performed this year. We got some breaking news. We want to get everybody in some breaking news that we just got, some college football news. It looks like Duke and their quarterback, Dybantsa, have reached a settlement announced by his agency. This is significant for anyone not paying attention. Mensa had signed an NIL, multi-year NIL deal with Duke and then entered the transfer portal after signing it. Looked like he was committed to go to Miami. Duke sued him to stop that from going on because of the language in the contract. That case wasn't going anywhere, but they have now reached a settlement so he can enroll in a new institution. Don't have the details on what that settlement looks like, but they had to come to some sort of financial agreement, I am sure, because at this point, just a reminder for everybody, these are contracts. So a quarterback signed a contract and then wanted to go somewhere else and found out, oh my God, you have to negotiate your way out of a contract before you can sign ... check it, another contract.
Yeah, it is something that I think a lot of college players are learning this year. When you sign a contract, you were locked into that contract. I think Damon Williams was the first one, the quarterback out of Washington. He signed that rev share agreement, and then he said, wait, no, never mind. I want to enter the transfer portal. And Washington said, no, you literally can't do that. Sorry. I have mixed emotions on this. I am glad that they came to a settlement, because how uncomfortable would that be if Duke said, no, we're not going to settle with you. You have to come back next year. That's a little uncomfortable. That adds a weird little quirk in the locker room that, look, your quarterback didn't want to be here and he's only here because he was forced to be. Not always the best for supporting team development and team camaraderie. But also, where does Duke go from here? You know, you can't enter the transfer portal. The transfer portal is closed. And sure, I'm sure there are plenty of quarterbacks in the transfer portal now that have not found their next destination. But Duke's coming off of the ACC championship game. Duke's coming off of a really exciting season, a year in which Dybantsa played really well. So now you don't have a quarterback. What is the solution moving forward? A settlement is great and all, but Duke football is worse off today than they were just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, this is the new Wild Wild West, and every one of these instances is some level of precedent. It's a word we use a lot as we cover it. We have to use it a lot because every ounce of precedent becomes something that everybody else will keep an eye on. This has been, from the outset, one of those types of cases, and it will continue to show at least a path forward for everybody involved. We'll keep you updated as we get more breaking news on it. Coming up next, though, we're going to get to one of our favorite college football analysts, Yogi Roth, going to join us. Yogi studies quarterbacks better than anybody. So now that we look back, who should have been number one? How would we redraft one of the most famous quarterback classes of all time?
One school that's doing some work in there right now, very quietly, is the Florida Gators. At the time of us taping this, Florida is sitting there with a top 10 class. And you're like, JD, wait a second. Florida's got a top 10 class? Who have they added? And I think this portal class in general for John Summerall is a good reflection of just the overall vibe, attitude, persona of what you're going to get from John Summerall during his time in Gainesville.
So now I've been thinking about the Denver Nuggets here for a little bit. Jamal Murray's gonna have to carry the torch during this program. Like, it's I know it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air looking around and no furniture around, but hey, he's gonna have to figure it out. What I will say that helps Denver is the return of this version of Aaron Gordon. And I very specifically mean this version of Aaron Gordon. And I know you might have a twinge of concern that he may do too much, but it was good early and they need it now.
Have you had a chance to kind of unpack all of it?
Yeah, I don't know that I have yet. I think it's just another reminder of how wild pro football can be. I've lived it so many times. I mean, I think going back a little over 2 years ago when I tore my Achilles to now, there's been a lot of curveballs and a lot of change. And, I was told a long time ago in pro football, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm reminded of that time and again.
How long do you feel like that window is with Lamar, though?
I think you can get 2 more years of Lamar as a locked-in top 5 guy. And then I think after that is when it's like, okay, maybe he ages to more being a top 12 guy, which is still good. Maybe more of a tier 2 guy in my brain. And then it kind of ages from there. Russ went from like a tier 2 guy that fell off to a tier 3, tier 4 guy. You're going to have that drop off at some point in your career.
Rank the conferences from a football lens. Such a simple, innocuous, easy tweet from Yogi Roth. And then all of a sudden you realize that you are just absolutely creating a storm from all of the fans. Yogi Roth, college football analyst, podcast host, best-selling author, motivational speaker, and, of course, part of Elite 11. You know Yogi. Yogi's great. Thanks for stopping by, man. All right, so do it for us. You made everybody else do it. Wow, we're going to make you do it. Rank the top college football conferences, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me on. First of all, congrats on both of your success. It's been fun learning about you, and of course, just watching you, Jason. We've known each other for a while now, man. So anytime an opportunity to come hang out with you, man, I'm all in. I think ranking the conferences, it was a fun question for me to pose because I've lived like the trauma of conference ranking in a previous life. Remember, I worked for the Pac-12 for almost 20 years. So I was covering that league. I was defending that league. I was trying to educate on that league. And oftentimes the conference ranking would come down to who won the title game, which I think is a little too easy to do, or who won their bowl games, which now like means nothing, right? Your team in your bowl game is not the team from last year, and it's not the team for next year. So I wanted to throw it out there and just kind of see where fans lie, right? We know what social media can be. Sometimes it helps us, sometimes it informs us, sometimes it makes us turn our phones off. So with that said, I looked at this and I said, all right, let me just kind of get the pulse of college football, and then let's layer in what I think my eyes tell me as an analyst, watching film, calling games, etc. And I look at the Big Ten, and I look at all the teams this past season that played in 9 conference games, and I just look at them and I say, well, there's really no equity across the sport if you're still in the SEC playing 8. And I think that's an important note that I've always kind of leaned on when you look at bowl records, etc., games that are top heavy like title games. And then I started thinking about the amount of close games that you had. And I look at the Big Ten this year, there's over 31 score games the last 2 seasons in their expanded league. And that's an impressive number. And I always go down to, okay, what makes those games so tight, so close? And as a broadcaster, it's really simple. It's the quarterback play and it's the coaching. And when I look at the quarterback play within the Big Ten this year, when I looked at it last year, I saw a dramatic improvement. When I look at the coaching, I think it's been impressive across the board. And then when you look at what happened on the field, I don't think you can ignore it. And so to me, Big Ten was at the top. I don't think it's dramatic by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think it's dominant over the SEC, but I think you have to look at them and look at some of the premier players. And now you look at even the 4 new coaches that are out of that league. And to me, it's a pretty easy answer. It's not by a country mile by any stretch, but it is the truth. And they did the things that are relatively easy to judge. Bowl games, title games, we know the story in that regard. So I go there. I'd have to go with the SEC second. I think it makes sense. And then I think there's a divide. I think that's going to be an interesting part of the college football zeitgeist moving forward. I thought that college football was going to expand to 24. I've been pushing that because I felt as though take your 5th best team in every conference, Jason. If you're going to spend $2.5 million on a quarterback to go to Duke, go to Pitt, go to Wisconsin, go to Iowa, like whatever, you want to rank your 5th best team, Tennessee, you name it. If you don't have a chance to go to the postseason, I think it's going to be hard in a couple of years for alums and donors to keep paying that type of money. I just think you're going to be saying to yourself, give it to the basketball team, give it to somebody else. So I was hoping that the middle class would get raised a little bit. So as I look at the conference ranking, I get worried about our friends in the ACC and the Big 12. If you're only going to get one team in the postseason moving forward, unless you got a ton of money like a Texas Tech, or Miami, I think it's just going to be hard for your fan base and your donor base to continue to support all of the finances that are required now to compete at a top level.
I think it's a great point and something that I've questioned myself, the sustainability of the current model of college sports, and also looking at the divide in television revenue. The SEC and the Big Ten make significantly more from their TV deals than the Big 12 and the ACC, respectively. But I think for all of those reasons that you pointed out, it's clear. It's the Big Ten and the SEC. They are the kings of college football. To the victors go the spoils. The Big Ten has won 3 consecutive national championships, 3 different teams over the last 3 years. But when it comes to negotiating power, we're talking so much about playoff expansion. We're talking so much about what the future of college football looks like. Which of those conferences is more powerful?
Well, I don't think you can argue there. I think it's the Big Ten. I mean, just look at the coast-to-coast, element of the league. It feels like the NFL. Calling games at 9 a.m. Pacific when I'm flying out to Indiana, and it's rocking last year. I called their game against UW last year where game day was there, and you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then a couple weeks later, I can call. I did it this season. It was, at the time, Purdue and Rutgers did not have a win in the conference. You would have felt it was like a Big Ten championship game. I mean, 98% capacity, just rocking in that regard. And then you come out to the West and you look at what SC has done, new facility, top recruiting class in the country. Here comes Jaden Mayava, Lincoln Riley. What are they going to do heading into year 5? Look up the road a little bit, and here we go with Oregon, which I think they are just a power. I mean, you could argue it's the best job in college football, and what Dan Lanning has done in taking what Mario Cristobal elevated has been masterful, and they're going to be your favorites, I think, next year to go win the whole thing with Dante Moore and a lot of their defensive front returning. And then Washington with Damon Williams. I mean, I heard you talking about him in your previous segment. He might be the most dynamic quarterback in the Big Ten in terms of all the things he can do and the pressure he puts on a defensive coordinator. Here comes Bob Chesney, who's coached in, I think, 183 total games as a head coach, and he's going to rebuild the UCLA thing, but he knows what he's doing. And time on task is impressive. So I just think more powerful. Then you add in the dynamics that the CFP has, where the 2 commissioners have to clearly agree on a model moving forward. There's a lot of juice there. And then the momentum that we talked about in the first question that you asked about what's the top conference. So I don't even think that one's close. I mean, all the narratives that you hear around the SEC is, can we keep a roster, retain a roster, build our roster? In the Big Ten, it's kind of the other way. It's reload, reload, reload. And I think that the thing that has really made it more powerful moving forward, if you want to use that word, as you reference, it's the coaches I reference. Kyle Whittingham's a Hall of Fame coach, going to Michigan now, hanging out in Ann Arbor. Come on now. Matt Campbell will be a Hall of Fame coach, goes to Penn State. You look at Michigan State and Pat Fitzgerald, an elite coach when you just look at the pedigree and then the player that he is, and just look at the early returns at Michigan State. And I referenced Bob Chesney. So I just think those 4 new coaches just elevate the league. And I say it compares to the NFL because the games are so tight. So another reason to expand, in my opinion. I think it'll help the SEC that they're playing 9 conference games. I'm telling you, I think that is a big deal when I'm watching Oregon play, Washington or USC in week 11 last year, and I got to watch Alabama or Georgia play the Citadel. Like, it is just a different world. So I'm glad that they finally eliminated that. So I think that's horrible for the game, for the health of the game, for the optics of the game, for the fan experience of the game. So it'll be a fun conversation to revisit a year from now. But right now, I don't think it's close.
All right, Yogi, one reason we were excited to have you on is because you do so much work around quarterbacks. And we're seeing some of the success of young quarterbacks. Drake May about to make his Super Bowl debut. Obviously, that was a loaded quarterback class. We can go back and look at Drake and Jaden Daniels and Caleb and JJ and Bo and all of the players in there. So we're going to put your feet to the fire a little bit here. If you had to redraft those quarterbacks, if you had to suddenly look at the 2024 quarterback class, and now we've seen so much success from some of these guys, how would you rank them? How would you draft them?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is turn my phone off because I don't want to hear from any of them because this is hard. I wrote a book called 5-Star QB, where a lot of these guys are in the book based on their high school experience. I meet them every summer, to your point, at the Elite 11. They've sat in my living room and dining room with my kids. I mean, they're amazing when I look at these 6 young men. I think they're fun conversations, right? You had Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. that they had these lengthy college careers. And then you looked at some of these other guys that they're part of the same draft class, and they went to Elite 11 together, and it was COVID 2020 Elite 11, and couldn't be near each other and all of those things. And then you look at how they've all developed. And I think the one commonality among them all, and I won't dodge your question, the one commonality among them all is they've all been through hard things. And I think as we talk about the quarterback position, and I don't know if we'll go there after this, but you have to be able to go through adversity and you have to be willing to walk through it. Whether we look at Sam Darnold, who When he came out, I remember going on the record saying, I think Sam Darnold's got the ability to be like a Hall of Fame quarterback in the NFL. And you would have laughed at that opinion in his first handful of years in the National Football League. And now look at where he sits. But he had to go through hard things. This is a guy who was a 3-sport athlete coming out of high school in San Clemente. He was a 3-star recruit till he came to Elite 11. I turned to Trent Dilfer and I said, doesn't he remind you of Andrew Luck? Boom. His recruiting exploded. He committed to USC and away he went. So I think that is a truth for all of those players whose faces we just saw on that graphic. They all have had to go through their own thing. It was Jaden Daniels dealing with it when he left Arizona State, and to me, completely mistreated. And the way people talked about him in the sports media, even coming out of that building, I thought was wrong. Clearly proven wrong. He hoisted the Heisman Trophy and got drafted where he got drafted and did what he did a year ago. Caleb, it's almost like it's easy to throw daggers at him sometimes and take shots. Dude's the best quarterback I've ever seen, in the college level, at least at that time. So if I was going to re-rank these guys, I'd still go Caleb 1. I think that he's just so unique in that regard. And again, had to go through what he went through his first year. I think oftentimes we look at these quarterbacks that don't pan out. Like the thing is going around about USC and Sam Darnold being the first one to ever get to the Super Bowl as a starting quarterback. And I'm like, well, yeah, because they're also drafted so highly to the worst teams. It's hard to do. It's hard to do if you're Carson Palmer and you're in Cincinnati and then you're with the Raiders. Like, it's just not the easiest thing if you're drafted so high. So I still go with Caleb. I think he's just got freaky, unique traits. I love how his mind works, and he's probably been the coolest to my 10-year-old among that group. So, I give him a little props there. I think 2, I'd probably go Jaden Daniels. I think the uniqueness of his twitchiness, the way that he can spin it. I know his mind. I've known him since he was 170 pounds soaking wet. And watching him progress through his path, he's the quietest probably of the group, but the way that he operates, at times he knows when he needs to turn up his own volume. So I love just the mind that he has approaching the craft. I think after that, it gets really hard for me because I look at a guy like Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix and the way they play, what they do to their team, the way their mind works. I'd probably have to go Bo if I was going to go somewhere, just because of his time on task as a starting quarterback if I had to redraft these guys. And then it just gets hard. The unique arm talent of Penix, Drake May, we know what he is. He was the same guy coming out, same guy in college, steady, quiet, but also surgical, also could be a sniper, also had that killer instinct. We're seeing that on full display. And same thing with J.J. McCarthy. I think he went 37-2 in high school. Then he never lost again in college. I think he lost 2 games in college, like just a winner. So all of them, to me, have been, they were so impressive early on. If you met him, you'd be like, oh my God, is this real? How many, can you be that kind, thoughtful, and competitive and talented? And I think I'm rooting for them all. And they're clearly the next wave of the National Football League, which is really fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it's easy to root for all of these guys. But I do want to stick on your number 1 quarterback in that class, and Caleb Williams. This past season in Chicago was nothing short of magical. Ben Johnson was the perfect hire for Caleb Williams. But from what you've seen from him and what you know about him, what is his ceiling in the NFL?
As high as he wants it to be. He's never put limits on himself. Go back and listen to my podcast, Why Option, with him, his first week on campus at SC, and you'll hear him talk about speaking things into existence and the vision he has for himself and his career. I think again he catches a lot of flack for, whether it's things that his family has said or the Bears and the draft, the whole story. I'm reading the book American Kings right now, which is phenomenal. Check it out, by Seth Wickersham, about the quarterback position. But you get past the highlights, and there's so much depth there. And I see that when I'm around Caleb Williams. And I've known him for a while. And I think to be an elite player, not only do you have to be a competitor, accurate, processor, but you really have to be, what I've coined over my time around this position, is you have to be a seeker, seeking out how to be better, seeking out wisdom, seeking out advice, knowing you don't have all the answers. When you do stumble, you seek ways to go through it. Seek ways to watch film, like on and on and on. Like, it never ends. You don't turn that off. Pete Carroll used to tell us that 20 years ago. You're either competing or you're not. And I think for Caleb, that's him. That's his unique trait. He's got a beautiful vision for himself, and I think his team follows. And I think we've seen him continue to grow in this new system, and I cannot wait to watch him head into year 3.
All right, Yogi, we got to get you out of here. Quick before we get you out of here, on a scale of 1 to 10, give me 30 seconds. A scale of 1 to 10, how excited should I be for Fernando Mendoza?
Oh, you should be here excited just to talk to him. I hope you'll probably be at the Super Bowl. I hope he does the Jerry Maguire walkthrough. And if he does, get time with him. He's phenomenal. I met him at Cal when they called him the mayor. And obviously, he's not just the mayor, but he's the governor, he's the president, he's whatever you want in college football right now. And he's a beautiful soul. I mean, he really is. He's an elite competitor. He's a different personality, man, but he's a winner. And he can relate to the players. He's got so many special traits. And again, I go back to the same thing I referenced earlier. He's been through it a lot. He's been through adversity. People haven't picked him, haven't bet for him. He hasn't tried to prove people wrong. He's tried to prove himself right. And look where he stands now at the top of the mountain in college football.
He's about to be the king of Raider Nation. You are the king for us. Thanks for hanging out with us. Got to get you back on to talk more about Fernando because I've got a man crush on him. Check out Y Option Podcast. Check him out on the Big Ten Network. Follow him on Twitter, X, at Yogi Roth. Yogi, always appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hanging out with us.
You got it. Have a great day.
Thanks,
great
Yogi.
stuff from Yogi, as always. His quarterback breakdowns I can listen to all day, every day. Coming up, is the old school head coaching mentality dying off? We'll tell you about it next.
Penn State has imported Iowa State. It's the best way I could explain it. Penn State has now taken Rocco Beck. They took RB1. They took wide receiver 1. They took 3 offensive linemen. I detest that this is how college football works at the moment, but it's the way it works at the moment. And that is when you take a head coach, part of the thinking behind hiring the head coach is who he can bring with him. And in Matt Campbell's case, it was basically whoever he wants.
I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go here because I think that Roman, this is the deal with him. He's not terrible. He's not offensive as an offensive coordinator, but he can get you to a certain point. You need somebody else to get you to the next point. I think he's done a good job with Herbert getting him to run more and getting him to push the ball down the field. Now I'd like to see, someone kind of just, again, give him some more quicker options. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see from the next coach.
Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gahn, that needs to be resolved, right? Hamzat Shemaiah versus Sean Strickland. But I will accept Hamzat Shemaiah versus Fluffy Hernandez. If Fluffy beats Sean Strickland, I'll take either of those. Here's another one of my, but you accept these as secondary.
100%.
Armin Sarukian versus UFC lightweight champion. We cannot just keep having Armin doing grappling matches and eating and all this stuff.
I'm kind of okay with it.
No, I'm not.
No,
I know you love it.
You get the first pick in the underrated player draft. Who are you taking?
Jalen Duren has never made an All-Star game. He's never made an All-NBA team. He's gotten so much better as a scorer this year. Jalen Duren is like a legit All-Star this year. And so because everybody talks about the Detroit situation like it's trash and Cade Cunningham, I'm going to say he's still a little bit underrated, and he's my number 1 pick.
Paul Kuharski tweets out, Robert Saleh's introductory press conference has been pushed back to Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Now, that is in part due to storms that have absolutely destroyed Nashville, first and foremost. We hope everybody in Nashville remains safe. There's still plenty of people there without power. So right now, heartbreaks for that city, everybody dealing with it. It was originally scheduled for the press conference, I should say, was originally scheduled for Wednesday. Now, you might be a little confused and thinking, didn't we know that Robert Saleh was hired like a week and a half ago? The answer to that is yes, but according to multiple reports, part of the reason that this press conference is finally happening now is because Robert Saleh had a family trip planned to Hawaii. Now, this is one of those moments where, there's no right or wrong answer. It just speaks to different strokes for different folks, that this is the second chance for Robert Saleh. This is a chance to come in and fix a floundering organization. There's so much dysfunction in Tennessee. Titans fans, obviously, I think are probably aware for both of us, but full disclosure, we both lived in and worked around this market, this team for a long time. So we're very familiar with the Titans. Robert Saleh is not just taking a job. He's taking a job where there's a lot to clean up. So how do we sort of process the fact that before he does that, to energize himself after a long season, he doesn't dive right in like our mindset of coaches usually. He takes a little time with the family in Hawaii first.
Yes. As a person who prioritizes family and values my free time, I say good for Robert Saleh. Good for him for taking that time with his family and for, going through on the things that they had planned. The side of me that loves football and appreciates football and understands the true crisis and dumpster fire the Tennessee Titans are in, part of me kind of says, shame on you, Robert Saleh. I understand the grind of a football season. I understand that you probably don't get to see your wife or your kids, your significant other, your friends, your family, your loved ones very often, and you're going to take the opportunities to do it when you can. But the Titans need help. The Titans are in a disaster scenario. The Titans are one bad hire away from ruining the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward. And Robert Saleh is now taking very precious time. That's what we are in right now in this coaching hiring cycle. Whatever all of these teams, new coaches or existing coaches, are putting their plans into place for next season, they're already getting all of those things into motion. They're interviewing candidates. They're identifying what their respective franchises need and finding people that can fill those needs. When all of these other teams are getting a head start on that, Robert Saleh's in Hawaii. Now, look, I don't want to criminalize a guy or indict a guy for spending time with his family and taking some time away. But you also get paid incredibly handsomely to be a head coach in the National Football League. You get paid very well to work really hard. And so when you look at a franchise that needs a lot of help, that has so many roster holes, that are trying to sell $30,000 PSLs in their new stadium, I wouldn't be too pleased if I was Amy Adams Strunk if I just hired a new head coach to be the savior for my franchise and he's prioritizing vacation over his job.
And look, I'm the first to admit I'm the wrong person to ask about a lot of this because I love work. I've always loved work. Even as a kid, I loved tasks. I like focus. My purpose in a purpose-driven life is the work that I do. I take a lot of pride and joy in how I approach my job every single day. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask because if I were given the opportunity of a lifetime, I would rather do that than go to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. That being said, I'll never forget when I got my first full-time offer for ESPN. And, I got a contract and it was the most exciting day of my life until I read the page in the contract that said, by the way, you have 30 days to move to Bristol, Connecticut. I didn't even know where Bristol, Connecticut was on a map from Nashville. So in 30 days, I had to figure out where I was going to live, how I was going to afford it. And I was not making I wasn't making a tenth of what Robert Saleh makes per year to coach. I actually kind of feel bad for everybody involved in this because he's in Hawaii on a vacation, but we know that vacation is largely also being spent on the phone trying to figure out who your staff is. And it's trying to, you're trying to figure out how you're moving, where you're going to go, what parts of town you want to live in. Yes, teams help with all of this, but he's got a wife and kids. Like everybody, you got to figure out where the schools are. There's a lot of adjustment for Robert Saleh. So I actually feel like, unfortunately, if he's gone to Hawaii for a vacation, I have a sneaking suspicion it's been kind of a half-assed vacation at best. The other side of all of this, though, is that, if you're Robert Saleh, to your point, number one, your main priority is how are you putting a staff together and how are you getting the right guys in the room to make sure that Cam Ward grows. The most important thing about the Tennessee Titans right now is not who their head coach is. It's who's going to develop Cam Ward. What is the plan to make sure that your number 1 overall pick becomes successful? I am a big believer in get ahead of it. So the day that if tomorrow I were in a situation where my beloved Raiders called me and said, you're the new head coach, and my God, if they don't get somebody soon, maybe they will. But the first thing I'm doing is wrecking my phone trying to build a staff because I feel like I need to do that with some level of urgency. I want to make sure that quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators and line coaches, they know that I want them, that they are the people I want to execute my vision. Now, maybe Robert Saleh is doing that from Hawaii. I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's working the phones tirelessly. He's still an NFL head coach. But it's a strange optic. It's at least a much different optic than what we got from Mike McDonald, who obviously in his Super Bowl prep was asked about sort of his process. And this is interesting. I want you to hear what he said when he talked about how much he actually sees his son while coaching an NFL football team. Check this out.
I actually think I'm here less, which is, I wish some of our coaches took that as well. But, on Thursdays, I don't get to see Jack throughout the week as much. So Thursdays I try to get, which is today, I try to get home pretty quick to be with him for maybe a half hour before he goes to bed. And then I got a setup at my house where I can go and then I work on the game plan. But it's able to spend some more time at home and be with Jack and And also, it kind of lets you kind of get away from everything and kind of see things from a different perspective, and it keeps you fresh, So it's been helpful.
Now, that is obviously him talking about only seeing his kid for a second. And Paulie Market says, great dad. Says he makes an extra effort on Thursdays to be home so he can spend 30 minutes with his son before he goes to bed. Look, your truth is not my truth. And I want to say this loud, like different strokes for different folks. Like my parents never had anything, but they worked tirelessly. I got my work ethic from my parents. Like we understood growing up as a kid that dad would be around when he could be around and mom would be around when she could be around, because that's how we kept the lights on. And, as somebody that came from nothing and watched my parents grind, I loved and appreciated that. I had an understanding of that even as a small child. I am not here to indict Mike Macdonald for how much time he spends working. Maybe that is a valuable lesson that his kids appreciate. But it certainly shows us, Caroline, that the coaches, even in the NFL right now, can be on wildly different ends of the very same spectrum within the same job.
Yeah, and I don't think that Robert Saleh doesn't work hard because he goes to Hawaii with his family. On the other side, I don't think Mike Macdonald is a bad dad because he is in the facilities all the time. Like it's not so black and white when we only get teeny tiny glimpses into these guys' personal lives. As bad as this sounds, I don't think anyone cares that Mike Macdonald doesn't see his son very much. I don't think that anybody cares the sacrifices that a head coach or an assistant coach or a GA or somebody that gets paid $35,000 a year to spend 80 hours a week in the facility. I don't think anybody cares. And I don't mean that to sound crass. I don't mean that to sound rude, but Mike Macdonald's heading to the Super Bowl. You think that he regrets all of the time that he spent in the facility? You think that he regrets all of the sacrifices that he's had to make? Because now he's at the pinnacle of the National Football League. He is going to the biggest spectacle that the game of football and sports as a whole has to offer. And when and I don't think that was Mike McDaniel complaining, but Mike Macdonald complaining. But I don't think that anyone who's a Seahawk fan or anybody who wants to get into coaching or anybody who's a football fan, period, is playing the tiniest violin for Mike Macdonald. This is what you sign up for when you're a football coach. This is what you know that you are getting into. And it's not just Mike Macdonald. It's not just a coach. It's coaches' families. I work with Rick Neuheisel on the radio, legendary college coach, but coached for the Ravens for a long time. And he said there's two types of football wives, great ones and ex ones, because that's just the life that you sign up for whenever you're married to a football coach. So I hate that. I hope that Mike Macdonald doesn't have any regrets once he decides to hang it up. But I don't think anyone really has any sort of sympathy for coaches who don't have a lot of free time.
I mean, to that end, my busiest year with the band, we were gone 300 days in one calendar year, right? Nobody ever sat there and thought, wow, I wonder if the fiddle player's seeing his family. It is funny. We pick and choose when we actually give a damn about this narrative. And I will remind everybody that some of the most popular names right now in the coaching search, Clint Kubiak, Clay Kubiak, Shula, what do all of these guys have in common? They come from families of coaches. How often do we see coaches' sons and daughters get into ... coaching? And they grew up around dads never there, but Neuheisel, his son, is a coach, right? Like, how often do we see coaching family trees? So it's funny to me because it's certainly easy for all of us to sit there and say, what is he doing? He's not. Weird flex. You don't get to see your kids. To which I would respond, maybe the family actually understands that lifestyle, appreciates that lifestyle, and has really warm, loving relationships, because there are certainly plenty of, we can't sit here and cry Nepo baby about the coaching trees half the time and then sit there at the same time and say, oh, what a terrible life being a coach's kid. So just a reminder to everybody, there's no right or wrong answer. And again, everything's about culture. It's working. It is working for Mike Macdonald. And guess what? If Robert Saleh turns around and turns the Titans around, nobody will care how often he spends in Hawaii either. It's all about whether or not you win. If you win, it's the right approach. If you lose, clearly it wasn't. We're all winning with our next guest. John Fanta is going to join us. We need to get in all things college hoops. Plus, we'll check in with John about his beloved Browns, see how he feels. Maybe he's going to be the next head coach in Cleveland. We'll figure it out.
At the very top of my list, We need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to
let's
this.
go show.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knipple and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see, he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knipple. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks, some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70. And then like the air went out of the ball for a month. And it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
John Fanta tweeted out, "Wheels up to Indianapolis. Can't wait to be at Assembly Hall for the 222nd edition of Purdue, Indiana. As if that wasn't enough, Kurt Signetti and Hoosier football's national title will be celebrated. Good God, what an environment, what an opportunity." And John Fanta joins us right now. What a night to be in Bloomington for our guy. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Let's start there, Signetti, the Hoosiers, because we're enamored by their success, obviously. What team, though, in college basketball, let's take this to college basketball, what team could turn around and become the Indiana Signetti of college basketball?
Well, guys, look, it has to be Nebraska this year because they're 20-0, and they've never won an NCAA tournament game. So they've been among the losingest programs. And what Fred Hoiberg has done is nothing short of amazing. And tonight, they take on Michigan in a top 5 showdown. Who would have ever thought that Nebraska basketball, or as they call Nebraska ball, would be playing in a top 5 game in college hoops? And this team, they've got terrific balance. Price Sanford is a top-level shot maker. Rink Mast spaces the floor, and Nebraska's going to need that floor spacing tonight. Michigan is gigantic. They have the biggest front court in the country with the Daimara and Morez Johnson. How do you beat Michigan? How do you stay with Michigan? You got to be able to have floor spacing and pull those bigs out, or attempt to anyway. So it could be Nebraska ball in the year 2026.
We are all proud members of the Corn Hub here. Love to see the turnaround at Nebraska. So that, like you mentioned, they take on Michigan. What do you need to see from both of these teams to really prove themselves to you?
Well, this is a Michigan team. By the way, I mean, this is a huge week for both these teams because as the graphic notes, Michigan plays at Michigan State on Friday. Nebraska is taking on Illinois this Sunday. So they have multiple top 10 games in the Big Ten, the most in a week since 2021. What do I need to see? I think for Michigan, it's just Yaxel Lendeborg has been a little bit up and down the last month and change. He's been dealing with a calf issue. I want to see him play his best basketball. When he does, it changes everything for the Wolverines. I think that Elliot Cadeau and his ability to be in control, I've been so impressed by his discipline. When I talked with Dusty May, I said, what's impressed you the most about the Carolina transfer? And he said, the way that he's fit into our system. Because when he was at Carolina, guys, he was a player who could go off script quite a bit. And sometimes there's good in that, but sometimes there's turnovers and some sloppiness in that. And Cadeau's really settled down well. Namari Burnett, Roddy Gale, LJ Kaysen, their depth is Trey McKinney. Their depth is amazing. It really is. I think for them defensively, as you see Cadeau, and he's been an energizer in every way. But you see the guy behind him, Morez Johnson and Adai. Those two guys, they make you work for everything you're going to get. You cannot take a shot, from 10 feet within. Michigan, they're the best in the country at the length of opponent 2-point shooting. In other words, you can't get to the basket against them. They're the best analytically in how they make you take tough twos. And because they have shot blocking. They're the best team in the Big Ten and a top 5 or 6 team nationally in shot blocking. I want to see Michigan, when they get spaced out, can they still be able to defend those Nebraska 3-point shooters? As for Nebraska, Braden Frager, he had an injury last week. How do they figure through that? And then for Fred Hoiberg's team, can they get enough from a Sam Hoiberg and from Jamarcus Lawrence in the backcourt? I'm confident in Sanford and Mass. They got to have enough complementary scoring in a game like this.
Oh, you mentioned that. I Friday night cancel my plans. I just cannot wait for Michigan State just to see that defense against Sparty. Let's see if Sparty can actually shoot, because so far this year, the farther they get from the basket, it does not work. All right, last night, Arizona survives a late push from BYU. They pick up an 86-83 road win. What a game. Will that be the toughest test in your mind that Arizona faces in the regular season as they push for an undefeated season?
No, it won't be the toughest test, because life in the Big 12 is unrelenting. This league is absolutely phenomenal. In terms of the top of it, I do think it's the best, very top of a league in college basketball. I think the Big 10, their depth is amazing and better than the Big 12. And the SEC has more depth, but the top of the Big 12 of the 6th-ranked teams. Here's the thing with Arizona. They still got to go to Fog Allen on February 9th, and that's even louder than BYU. And if Darren Peterson is playing, look out. They still got to play Texas Tech. They play BYU again. They still go to Houston. To me, that's the toughest game. When they go to Houston on February 21st, that is a really hard game, because Houston, they take what you're best at offensively and they say, we're going to limit it, and we're going to put a cap on it, and we're not going to let you run your stuff. So that physicality of Houston, especially in their building, that's going to be tougher than what Arizona saw last night, because BYU defensively is a bit up and down. You see it with Braden Burries. Like with Arizona, they got Braden Burries, they got Koa Pete, they got an All-American point guard in Jaden Bradley. They've got an answer to all of your questions, and I am so impressed by them. Mo Krivas and what he does in the front court. Anthony Del Orso and his the way he embraces his role. They're huge. They have a terrific backbone defensively, and their ability to just make different. Bradley and Burries last night ran the show. So Arizona passed one of their toughest tests. I still think there's a few more that are going to be even tougher, because barely anybody ever wins at Allen Fieldhouse, and they still got to go to Houston. But that is a reflection of the Big 12. The top of the Big 12 is ridiculous this year.
The Big 12 has been such a blast to follow, but I do want to transition over to the ACC. Duke picked up a massive win over Louisville, 30-point win, 83-52. Cam Boozer, 19-10. If anyone can challenge Duke in the ACC, who is it?
It's nobody. They're the best team in that league again, and nobody's challenging them in the conference, in my humble opinion. Could Clemson give them a game because of Clemson's discipline? Could Virginia? It's probably Virginia, I would say, and we're waiting for those two teams to meet. They're going to meet on February the 28th, and I'll be very intrigued to see what happens when they do meet. That's down the stretch in the season. And Ryan Odom's done a heck of a job with his team. Tess DeRitter is a freshman to watch. But here's the thing. Virginia lost over the weekend at home to Carolina. And I just don't see it. Will Duke drop a game here or there? Yeah. It's human nature. But they're 19-1. And you see this, guys. Like, I don't think we're talking enough about John Shire. I think everybody just thinks, well, he got handed Coach K's keys to the car. This might come off as a hot take. Duke's better. Duke's better right now than the last couple of years of Coach K. And it's because Shire's a stud. I mean, he's going to be the head coach at Duke if he wants to be for the next 30 years. This guy he's a total star. All he does is win in the regular season. Yes, he stumbled last year in the Final Four. They collapsed. They choked that game away. If they don't choke the game away to Houston, they probably win the national championship. And if he wins a national championship and now he's 19-1, how differently are we talking about him in the narrative world? So the fact is, Cameron Boozer's the ultimate winner. Ultimate winner. Isaiah Evans makes them go on both ends of the floor. Patrick Gongba's been tough. They have the one question that you would have is, do they have enough complementary around Boozer in the shot making department? But man, they're 19-1. They lead the country in quad one wins. Like, give the Blue Devils their shine. I know everybody loves to hate Duke, but I'm here to tell you, you got to love what this team is doing. This team can win the national championship and should be as much of a front runner as anybody because their body of work is better than anybody's.
I mean, to your point, I was sitting on the couch last night and literally said out loud, but I thought you don't want to be the man that replaces the man. Like, Shire has done that, and there's just no drop. And this Duke team is somehow likable. I mean, there's just somehow but John, doesn't, like, for your conversation about the ACC, doesn't this scream to why there needs to be an ACC Big East merger in basketball? Like, I'm tired of watching UConn beat up on nobody and Duke beat up on nobody. Put everybody in this one big mega conference together.
Look, it'll keep coming up. It's just so hard to fathom it with how would you work out the football element of it. And, you know, that's what led these the Big East schools when they reconfigured in 2012-13 to then launch in 2013. When they made that move because they wanted to just go basketball first. And secondly, they didn't have a choice because all the football schools took what was theirs. So there would have to be a lot that would have to happen for a merger of some sort. You know, look, Val Ackerman and Jim Phillips are two very strong commissioners and have visions for their leagues. And, you know, maybe it's not the first time that those two have talked about different things in college sports, but I don't think that they've ever entertained the thought of merging their leagues just for the issue of how would you make all the logistics, how would you make everything work, and how would you make the share of between units and between how would the football itself actually work? Would that just be its own entity and stuff? I mean, it already practically is. Fitz, I totally get where you're coming from. And like, the fan in me says, let's do it. I just think the reality of it is far away from our wishes.
All right, Judd, there's been a little bit of a controversy, let's say, in college basketball. Charles Bediako went from the G League to Alabama, gave the Crimson Tide a massive boost in their matchup with Tennessee just a couple of days ago. He played under Nate Oates for 2 seasons, then went to the G League for 3 years. What is your thought? What is your philosophy, not just on Charles Bediako, but the idea that you can go to the G League and then just come back to college?
The thought is that has to end. It has to end right now. And it's not Charles's fault. And it's not Nate Oates' fault, although the coaches collectively, they're the guardians of the game. They're in this every day. And there's got to be better leadership and accountability in college basketball. It can't just be statements and taking people to court and saying that makes it right. The fact is, it's college basketball. Is it pay for play now? Hell yeah, it is. But there's a line. And when people say, well, the G League, it's the G League. What about the international guys who played pro ball? I don't care. Those guys, that's a different rule setup. It's a totally different ball game. The fact is, the NBA is the best league in the world with the best players in the world. I heard over the weekend somebody say the G League really doesn't exist anymore. I heard that. I'm sure you guys might have heard something to that. What are you talking about? Well, what are you talking about? It's a league, and the franchises in the NBA are connected to that league. And they call people up and put people back down, especially this time of year. Ask the Warriors who was playing for them last night. They were missing multiple players, and the G League is important. It is very much within the NBA. You know, it really is. And as time's gone on, it is very much like a minor league baseball team would have a call-up or would have systematic development, that's all very real. Once you get into that pipeline, you are in the NBA. You are in the NBA. You entered that draft just because you couldn't make it to the big leagues. That's on you. Not on college basketball to figure out your new pathway. So I don't blame the kid, and I feel bad for the kid when he plays a road game. I'm not trying to single him or Nate Oates out. The James Najee thing, he shouldn't be playing either. And people are like, well, he's only averaging a bucket a game. You're making a lot out of nothing. It's the principle of the matter. Because what if Charles has 16 points and 7 blocks? And I know there's 23 and 24-year-olds in college basketball, and some of that you can't fully prevent. But you can't prevent this. Once you have taken the steps to go into the NBA, it's like you and me, guys, it's like the three of us, right? Once you take certain steps in your life, you can't go back. You can't go back. That has to end, and it has to end immediately.
I love your passion on it. I think you're 1,000% right, and I appreciate your honest take on it. Speaking of honest takes, got to get your honest take. We have you on all the time. We love you, and we love your Browns fandom. So got to get you, before we get you out of here, which head coach? Browns still don't have a coach. If you want to announce to the world that you're taking that job, we'd love that you'd announce that here. Who do you want to be the head coach at this, and how excited should they be for that Pro Bowler, SHEDEUR Sanders?
Okay, well, the first thing with the Pro Bowler, SHEDEUR Sanders, if I'm the other Pro Bowlers, I'm saying, what's going on here? I mean, look, the NFL is always king in the ratings book, and they were looking for a boost, and SHEDEUR Sanders provides that boost. Let's just call it what it is, all right? I hope SHEDEUR is the answer for the Cleveland Browns. He did some good things. It's hard to fully evaluate him. He's going to get his shot in training camp, but he might be the starter come September. Is he the certain starter? No, I'm not ready to say that because we got to see what the new coach wants to do. As for the coaching hire. So the Browns are in this mode. Mary Kay Cabot reports overnight that, Jim Schwartz is gaining momentum. Okay. So this search has been going on for 3 weeks. And these two people have been running it. There they are. Andrew Berry, who is the GM of the Browns and nailed the last draft, but was 0 for his previous 5 on drafts, let's be honest. And Jimmy Haslam, who, well, he's run through his fair share of coaches and quarterbacks, and frankly, it ultimately hasn't worked. Kevin Stefanski did some good. It's the longest that they've been patient with a coach, and obviously things came to an end. Maybe even that went longer than people thought it would, but okay. To me, there's a couple of red flags with this search. If Jim Schwartz is gaining momentum now, why wasn't he just the hire 3 weeks ago? Clearly, he wasn't your top choice. Clearly, because you would have just hired him. He already works for you. You've interviewed all these people. You flew to LA. They got on a plane and flew to Los Angeles to go and interview and I think hire Nathan Shieldhouse. I think that was the goal when they got on that plane. And now Shieldhouse is talking to the Bills. I would prefer Shieldhouse. I think he's a young offensive mind. The Browns offense needs a complete renovation. He's been with Sean McVay. Look at that offense. Look at how electric it's been. Look at their aggressiveness. I'm in support of Shieldhouse. And people say, I've had a bunch of people who are like, Jim Schwartz is great. He's been an awesome coordinator. And he's a passionate guy. But if he was the top choice, why'd you wait 3 weeks? And oh, by the way, if he was so desired, why hasn't he been interviewing other places over the last 3 weeks? So the Browns looks like on paper, I would like Shieldhouse, but it looks like they might do a very Browns thing and do what they did with Freddie Kitchens and just elevate within. That was a one and done.
Well, what I know is Shieldhouse offensive coordinator, Schwartz defensive coordinator, John Fanta, next head coach of the Cleveland Browns. We're calling it here. Let us know when the plane heads to you. In the meantime, before he takes that job, watch him on NBC Sports. Follow him on Twitter, X, John_Fanta. John, man, always appreciate your info and your energy. You make days brighter, man. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Thanks for all the great expertise.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for having me. A pleasure.
Thanks,
great
John.
stuff from John, as always. From the best to the worst, is it possible that there's biggest bust ever title around that man? We'll break down some Zion for you next.
One school that's doing some work in there right now, very quietly, is the Florida Gators. At the time of us taping this, Florida is sitting there with a top 10 class. And you're like, JD, wait a second. Florida's got a top 10 class? Who have they added? And I think this portal class in general for John Summerall is a good reflection of just the overall vibe, attitude, persona of what you're going to get from John Summerall during his time in Gainesville.
And I've been thinking about the Denver Nuggets here for a little bit. Jamal Murray's gonna have to carry the torch during this program. Like it's, I know it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air looking around and no furniture around, but hey, he's gonna have to figure it out. What I will say that helps Denver is the return of this version of Aaron Gordon. And I very specifically mean this version of Aaron Gordon. And I know you might have a twinge of concern that he may do too much, but it was good early and they need it now.
Have you had a chance to kind of unpack all of it?
Yeah, I don't know that I have yet. I think it's just another reminder of how wild pro football can be. I've lived it so many times. I mean, I think going back a little over 2 years ago when I tore my Achilles to now, there's been a lot of curveballs and a lot of change. And I was told a long time ago in pro football, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm reminded of that time and again.
How long do you feel like that window is with Lamar, though?
I think you can get 2 more years of Lamar as a locked-in top 5 guy. And then I think after that is when it's like, okay, maybe he ages to more being a top 12 guy, which is still good. Maybe more of a tier 2 guy in my brain. And then it kind of ages from there. Russ went from like a tier 2 guy that fell off to a tier 3, tier 4 guy. You're going to have that drop off at some point in your career.
Some interesting news for shoe heads everywhere. Zion Williamson's signature shoe line is being discontinued by Jordan. So remember, he signed that deal before entering the NBA, second largest rookie shoe deal ever at $75 million. The Zion 4, which was released in 2025, will be the final version of that shoe. And look, this isn't just about a shoe. This is about so much more than that, Caroline. Like, let's just start right there. Jordan doesn't stop selling shoes if shoes are selling. Like, that's just, at the end of the day, Jordan discontinues his shoe as a brand because people aren't buying it. People aren't buying it because people aren't buying Zion anymore. Like, Zion isn't just bad. It's just as a brand at this point. I hate to say he's bad, but as a brand, he's irrelevant. That's why they stopped selling a shoe.
Well, I will use my own personal example. I wanted to go buy Angel Reese's shoe, her Reebok shoe, not because I loved the shoe and I thought it was, it fit perfectly into my wardrobe. It was because I love Angel Reese and I wanted to support Angel Reese. Now, I couldn't because they sold out in like 5 seconds, but I think that's just an example of when you are buying a celebrity-sponsored anything, tequila, shoe, purse, perfume. You're not just buying the product. You are buying your fandom. You are buying your investment and your adoration for a certain person. And I remember a time back in 2019 and 2020 when Zion was still viewed as the savior for New Orleans. Zion's shoes were flying off the shelves. I remember he had like either a Mardi Gras or like a voodoo themed shoe, like very much so like a City Connect kind of shoe. Pretty sure it sold out in like 5 minutes, maybe even less, because everyone was buying into Zion. You're not buying into Zion anymore, clearly. They're not buying his shoe. I think everyone's over Zion.
And that speaks to the fact that Zion has become, in the world of hype, maybe the biggest bust we've ever seen in the NBA. Not as a player. He's had moments as a player, but as a hype machine. I'll never forget. I was in Cameron. I was there covering Duke, North Carolina for the shoe explosion game. I was there. And when you talk about just the vibe inside of that arena, and when you talk about the energy, the reason at the time ESPN sent us there had nothing to do, very little to do with Duke, North Carolina, a little bit to do with camping out with the Cameron Crazies and doing that whole thing. That was fun. But it was all about the energy of, oh my God, this is Zion taking on North Carolina for Duke, North Carolina at Cameron. We may never see this again because this is Zion who's going to go to the NBA and he's going to wreck the league. He's going to be LeBron, like he's going to take it over. When you go back to the way that we were talking about the hype around Zion, and then you realize what we've gotten, it has to be viewed as one of the biggest flops in NBA history. Again, not from the moments, because he's had a couple of moments where he played really well, but from the overall impact as a brand and the overall impact as a star and an overall impact as a player. Overall, I mean, Zion is just, he's a forgettable chapter. That we are at a spot where in 10 years, people are going to say, oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, Zion. Yeah, he was hyped too. Like, and look, I want to blame the Pelicans, but I also have to blame Zion. Like, we've looked at a guy that just at times seemed indifferent. We watched a guy that just didn't take care of his body. We watched somebody that, frankly, didn't look like he was in shape half of his career. And then by the time he got into shape, who really knows? I mean, the number of lost opportunities doesn't change the fact that the chapter of Zion that we will be talking about in 20 years is a chapter, Caroline, clearly written about disappointment, not about living up to the moment, not about matching the hype, not about matching the legend that we wanted him to be. Zion has, in fact, failed at all of those.
I think part of being a bust is hype. Of course, it's, expectation. Of course, it's where you're drafted. All of those things kind of ratchet up the expectation, but it's also hype. Do you remember that video of the of one of the offices within the Pelicans organization when they found out that they won the draft lottery? They threw their papers. Everyone jumped out of their chairs. Everyone was high-fiving. They were hugging each other. It was total and complete celebration in New Orleans because they got Zion. Do you remember the ongoing joke on social media of Zion Center? Because that was the number one story on SportsCenter anytime Zion did anything. Zion's shoe blew out. That was the number one story on SportsCenter. Zion dunked. He posterized what looked like children compared to his size. Number one story on SportsCenter. I was living in Louisiana and working in local news in Louisiana, the season before. That was so much of our conversation of, are the Pelicans going to be bad enough to be in the lottery to get Zion? Then I worked for ESPN just a couple of months later. That was the number one story all the time, was how can we get Zion into shows? How can we talk about Zion? What's the latest on Zion? We were all there. We all remember it. It feels like a really long time ago, but it really wasn't. Zion was supposed to be the savior. Zion was supposed to be the next great one. And now Zion's more famous for being fat than he is anything else that he does in the basketball court. Sorry if that sounds crass. It's true. And the New Orleans Pelicans organization is not innocent in this. Look, the Pels have been a dumpster fire for basically its entire existence. I think the Pels are viewed as a cursed organization for a reason. It's not a very well-run organization. So New Orleans isn't innocent in all of this. But Zion, I view a big portion of Zion's failure, an overwhelming amount of Zion's failure, is because of himself. It's because he didn't care enough. It's because he didn't take care of his body enough. It's because he didn't do the right things that is necessary to be a professional athlete. So yeah, I think it is fair to say he's not just one of the biggest busts in the history of the NBA. He's the biggest bust.
And look, to your point, back when he was drafted, I was hosting SportsCenter on Snapchat, a show that we later worked together on. And we would go into production meetings every night when we were building that show and say, what's the Zion moment? How are we working Zion into the show? Because 3.5 million kids ages 13 to 24 watched that show every single day. And you know what they wanted? Zion clips every single day. And then I would go over to radio and I would sit there and say at the time, boy, the Pelicans better make sure that they have some path to not blow it with Zion the way they blew it with AD, because you don't want to lose your star. And now we're all sitting here saying, the Pelicans are going to figure out how to get rid of Zion because it just didn't work. At this point, I don't really care who the failure's on. The fact is, if we go back and look at the way Zion was covered when he got into the league, and we look at the way that he's actually performed since he got there, it has to be one of, if not the biggest hype busts in history. From busts to the current NBA, we're going to go to one of the greats. Tom Haberstroh going to join us next. We'll get Tom's thoughts on yet another controversial story, possibly involving that man. We'll figure it out next.
Penn State has imported Iowa State. It's the best way I could explain it. Penn State has now taken Rocco Beck. They took RB1. They took wide receiver 1. They took 3 offensive linemen. I detest that this is how college football works at the moment, but it's the way it works at the moment. And that is, when you take a head coach part of the thinking behind hiring the head coach is who he can bring with him. And in Matt Campbell's case, it was basically whoever he wants.
I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go here, because I think that Roman, this is the deal with him. He's not terrible. He's not offensive as an offensive coordinator, but he can get you to a certain point. You need somebody else to get you to the next point. I think he's done a good job with Herbert getting him to run more and getting him to push the ball down the field. Now I'd like to see, someone kind of just, again, give him some more quicker options. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see from the next coach.
Tom Aspinall, Cyril gone. That needs to be resolved, right? Hamzat Shemaev versus Sean Strickland. But I will accept Hamzat Shemaev versus Fluffy Hernandez. If Fluffy beats Sean Strickland, I'll take either of those. Here's another one of my, but you accept these as secondary.
100%.
Armin Sarukian versus UFC lightweight champion. We cannot just keep having Armin doing grappling matches and eating and all this stuff. He
I'm
must
kind of okay
fight
with
for
it.
No, I'm not.
No,
I know you love it.
You get the first pick in the underrated player draft. Who are you taking?
Jalen Duren has never made an All-Star game. He's never made an All-NBA team. He's gotten so much better as a scorer this year. Jalen Duren is like a legit All-Star this year. And so because everybody talks about the Detroit situation like it's trash and Cade Cunningham, I'm going to say he's still a little bit underrated, and he's my number one pick.
Rich Paul has been talking not just to Giannis, but also to his brother, per at TrueHoop. Rich is said to have been making the case that he's the guy who can get a star player where he wants to go. Now, that reporting is from Henry Abbott at TrueHoop. And we're going to try and make some sense of it now with our resident bat phone NBA expert. We pick up the phone. The signal goes into the streets. Tom Haberstroh answers and comes and helps us. So just when we thought maybe the Giannis trade rumors would be quieted a little bit, what do you make first and foremost of this report?
Oh, this would not be the first time that Rich Paul stole, quote unquote, a star player and engineered a trade to his destination of choice. Remember Anthony Davis back in 2018. He was with Thad Fouché of Wasserman Group, and Rich Paul was able to take over his agent duties with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis fired his agent, signed up with Clutch Sports, and then less than a year later, he goes to the Los Angeles Lakers. Fast forward a couple years, De'Aaron Fox signs with Clutch Sports, and Draymond Green went out to Twitter and said, "Why does everyone think he's going to try to demand a trade out of Sacramento?" And then sure enough, a couple years later, he engineers a trade out of Sacramento to the San Antonio Spurs. So when you look at this story, reported by Henry Abbott, that Rich Paul is talking to Giannis Antetokounmpo's brother Thanasis, who is his confidant. There's a reason why the Milwaukee Bucks have him on the payroll, Thanasis on the payroll, even though he doesn't play, is because Giannis Antetokounmpo listens to him, right? And so if Rich Paul is trying to get the services of Giannis Antetokounmpo on his client list, that also means a huge potential payday for Rich Paul. For those who don't know, agent fees are around 3% on new contracts orchestrated by that agent. And you're looking at Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is in line to sign a 4-year, $275 million contract extension this offseason, so in October. But the issue is he has to be traded now at the deadline in order for him to be able to sign that contract extension with his new team, because of CBA rules that say you have to be with your team for at least 6 months in order for you to have that contract extension signed in October. So why is this happening now? Because of another rule in the players union and CBA. A player cannot switch agents and then have the new agent take over for at least 7 days. There's a 7-day waiting period. And if you look at the calendar, guys, February 5th is the trade deadline. So which means that there's really only a couple more days left before Giannis Antetokounmpo can switch agents from Alex Saratzis of Octagon and move to Rich Paul and have Rich Paul at the steering wheel to his next destination, potentially at the trade deadline. So there is a clock here that basically over the next 24 to 48 hours if Giannis Antetokounmpo wants to switch agents and have that agent help him on his next trade destination before the trade deadline, it has to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. And this is really good reporting from Henry Abbott, who talked to the Players Union. And in fact, Giannis Antetokounmpo is still represented by his current agent, not Rich Paul. But if he does want to make a switch and have the full maximum power of your agent to be at the levers, pushing the buttons, it will have to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours ahead of the trade deadline.
So we know Rich Paul and LeBron James besties. We have the history of Anthony Davis and him switching over to Rich Paul and then finding himself with the Los Angeles Lakers. Whenever Rich Paul is involved with a player, my question is, what's this tie to LeBron James? Is there a tie to LeBron James? So I'll ask you this, Tom. Exactly. Does his potential involvement with Giannis have anything to do with LeBron?
I don't think so at this point, but it has to be mentioned that Rich Paul is a very popular agent around the NBA, that he has a lot of clients. One of the ones I just mentioned, De'Aaron Fox, is in San Antonio right now. And he said, publicly has said, I felt like San Antonio was a great landing spot for De'Aaron Fox because he was able to grow with Victor Wembanyama. Now, that's really interesting because the San Antonio Spurs are one of many people around the league. One of the teams that could go after Giannis Antetokounmpo would have enough of the trade chips to go after Giannis and retain star talent like De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama next to Giannis would be a very scary trio in San Antonio. And they have the draft picks, they have the young talent in Dylan Harper, and of course Stephon Castle, that if they wanted to get into the Giannis sweepstakes, they absolutely could. And the Houston Rockets are another team that has the kind of draft capital and the young players to make a big swing at Giannis Antetokounmpo if he were ever to demand a trade out of Milwaukee, which as of this moment, there has been no trade demand, although there's been whispers around the league that he would like to get out of Milwaukee, but he doesn't want to be the bad guy. He doesn't want to be the one to say it outright. And so really this is a standoff here. And I don't see like a Lakers LeBron tie to this, but I would say that Rich Paul has not been shy about the fact that he wants his clients to be happy, like any agent, to be happy and successful and maximizing their earning potential and their happiness with their business. And De'Aaron Fox, one of his crown jewels among his clients, De'Aaron Fox wants to win a championship, obviously, with Victor Wembanyama. And can you imagine if Giannis Antetokounmpo was next to Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio? That's the kind of, connections, connecting the dots that I'm looking at in the light of this news is, what is the end game for Rich Paul? Of course, getting 3% of $275 million, about $8 million right there, that would be nice. But what would also be nice is the reputation for Rich Paul to have this basically brandish, the idea of him being the guy who gets star players out of their situations and where they want to be. And that's what a lot of players in the NBA, they want someone in their pocket that will be able to get them to their destination. And we'll see what Giannis really wants to do here. And the timetable is in the next 24 to 48 hours to learn. Then this tweet right here from Draymond Green: why does hiring Rich Paul has to be viewed as a move to be traded? Why isn't it simply the truth, which is Rich is the best in the business? At some point, the disrespect in this industry must stop. This was in the wake of De'Aaron Fox announcing that he was going with Rich Paul of Clutch Sports. And sure enough, a couple years later, De'Aaron Fox engineered a trade out of Sacramento to San Antonio. So at this moment, yeah, it might sound like Rich Paul wasn't trying to get De'Aaron Fox out of Sacramento, but of course we know how that ended. And it did take a couple years. This would be a much more accelerated timetable than what we saw with De'Aaron Fox and with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis happened in September, and he was traded the next July. I think what we're seeing here is the potential for this to accelerate much faster than those timetables, and potentially Rich Paul could be Giannis Antetokounmpo's agent in time for the trade deadline, and then we'll see what happens from there.
That being said, Tom, if you had to bet your house on it right now, the trade deadline is February 5th. On February 6th, is Giannis Antetokounmpo still a Milwaukee Buck?
considering all the smoke around this story, I'm going to say I don't think that he's going to be in Milwaukee in a couple weeks. I think he might have played his last game with the Milwaukee Bucks. It just seems like they're 15-15 with Giannis Antetokounmpo, not even contending right now in the depleted Eastern Conference, and they're 3-11 without Giannis. What's interesting about what Giannis said the other night, beyond the self-diagnosis, I've never heard this before, where a star player comes out and says, I'm going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, I think, in the immediate aftermath of going out of a game. But the other thing that was interesting was he said, I'll be out 4 to 6 weeks past the trade deadline, and we'll be fighting for a playoff spot or a play-in, and then I'll come back for that playoff push. I think what he might have been doing there, it fits. Like, if you think about what he says there, he's got to know that this team is out of the play-in right now, that they're 11th in the Eastern Conference. And it's almost like he's setting up a mandate. Like, if you are not in the play-in tournament and if you are not competing, I don't want to be here. Because that is really interesting that he's saying he's basically coming back to a playoff push, but they're not in a playoff scenario right now. They're 11th in the Eastern Conference. And so it might even be just like a trap that he's setting. If my team is not competing, then I'm going to ask out and be able to say with credibility, they are not building a title contender around me, and I'm upset with this supporting cast that can't even make it into the play-in tournament in the Eastern Conference. And it feels like he was laying down the groundwork for potentially down the road not being the bad guy and asking out. Now, if Rich Paul is involved in this, they might have a much more sophisticated way to ask out, because I don't think people are upset with De'Aaron Fox and what he did in Sacramento. Milwaukee is a very different situation, but you can see that Anthony Davis won a championship with the Lakers, and De'Aaron Fox is now playing with Big Vic and at the top of the Western Conference, right there with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And so you can see why Rich Paul would really want to get to Thanasis Antetokounmpo, Giannis's brother, and try to make Giannis his next big client.
It all makes sense. And I'm with you. We've been talking about Giannis getting shipped out of Milwaukee for long enough. It does kind of feel like the writing's on the wall. Now Giannis is kind of matching that energy for the first time in what feels like in his career in Milwaukee. But where makes sense for Giannis?
Anywhere, anywhere in the NBA would make sense for Giannis. He's that good, Caroline. But I would say, the Knicks have been wanting to get a championship, raise that banner, not a in-season tournament NBA Cup banner, but a championship banner. And I don't see how the Milwaukee Bucks will get what they need in a Giannis trade based on the draft assets, which are completely depleted from the New York Knicks side. They don't have first-round picks to send over to the Milwaukee Bucks that will make them whole. Karl-Anthony Towns, you're selling low on Karl-Anthony Towns. If you're the New York Knicks, you're not going to be able to get a Giannis, in my opinion, without a huge haul of draft picks coming from a third team. It just doesn't really make sense from the Milwaukee standpoint to do a straight-up trade with the New York Knicks. Of course, Giannis, with that injury concern, 4 calf strains over the last few years, and basically saying, I'm going to be out for the next month before any sort of MRI happened. He was like, I'm out. I'm sidelined. Any team acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo will have to understand the dynamic of those calf strains that keep recurring, second time this season. But I think he's that good and in his prime, that good a two-way player that I think teams around the league, like the New York Knicks, I mentioned the San Antonio Spurs, and I mentioned the Houston Rockets. Those two teams in Texas are the ones that I'm most intrigued by because of their ability to package young talent in a trade to Milwaukee, as well as competing for a championship right now. Because the Houston Rockets, they could put in Reed Shepherd, Jabari Smith. You could look at a couple picks going to Milwaukee, and they would still have Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün, Amen Thompson. And I know the Milwaukee Bucks would want to have Amen Thompson, but man, the Houston Rockets will have a lot at their disposal if they wanted to go all in for Giannis. So that's what's interesting to me. Also, Hakeem Olajuwon and Giannis have worked together, and Hakeem Olajuwon still very close with the Houston Rockets. So there is kind of a lot of smoke, not just around Milwaukee about the trade potential, but also San Antonio and Houston just seem like they're waiting to use those assets. I don't see it for OKC. For those who are wondering, could OKC, the number one team in the NBA, acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo at the deadline? Sure, but it wouldn't be part of Sam Presti's playbook to go get a guy at this stage in the wrong side of 30 when you're a reigning champion. I think they're going to continue to grow internally. I don't think OKC is a logical destination for Giannis.
Nobody explains it better than he does. Check out the big number. Follow him on Twitter, X at Tom Haberstroh. And, of course, you can find his title tiers at TomTheFinder.com. Tom, we appreciate it, man. It's going to be a wild week over the course of the next week. So every time the chaos comes, we're just going to say, what would Tom tell us? And that's going to be the truth. We appreciate your time. Thanks for the expertise as always, my friend.
You got it.
Thanks,
Great stuff
Tom.
from Tom. Coming up next, a battle of the mics, the trivia contest you didn't know that you needed. We'll figure out what some famous mics have been up to. Next.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to
let's
this.
go, Joe. Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knipple and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knipple. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70. And then like the air went out of the ball for a month. And it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
Field Yates tweeted out, important note, Super Bowl 60 will be the third time that both head coaches have had the same first name. In all three cases, both coaches were named Mike. You had Shanahan versus Holmgren, Tomlin versus McCarthy, and now McDonald versus Vrabel is on deck. The Mike v. Mike has us getting to the segment that only Yahoo Sports Daily could do. We're calling it Drop the Mic. All right, we're going to do a little bit of Mike trivia. In fairness, full transparency here. We have not looked at these questions at all. So we are going to be completely surprised by questions that give us a possible Mike answer and then figure out if we can figure out who it is. It's a factoid, then we guess the Mike. Caroline, are we ready for this? I feel good. I feel warmed up. We are going to be a trivia tandem for the ages.
I hope so.
Okay.
That's my confidence
we need a little more
level.
confidence.
I
All right,
hope
you
so.
know what?
Yeah.
Let's go. We got this. All right.
Let's do
We'll bring up
it.
the first question. I'm in. I'm all in on this. The first question. This Mike played in the NFL. He caught 12 receptions in his career, each of them resulting in touchdowns. I know the answer to this. I actually physically know the answer to this. Do you have any idea? This Mike played in the NFL, caught 12 reception in his career, each of them resulting in touchdowns.
All of them
Caroline
touchdowns?
Fenton, do you know the answer? 12 catches, 12
I don't
touchdowns.
think I do.
You know the answer? I can't believe
I
it
don't
because
think
you
so.
covered it. Mike Vrabel. That is Mike Vrabel. Tell me I'm right. Am I right? That's Mike Vrabel. I knew that.
Really?
I was all in. I was all in on that.
That's
Mike
awfully
Vrabel,
impressive.
factoid. Nah,
Does
that's,
that include
that's
picks? Or is that just
I
all
don't
of
know.
the times Mike Vrabel was used in offensive packages?
I think it was offensive packages. I just know I'll credit Taylor
Pretty
Lewan
impressive.
for Vrabel at one point apparently reminded everybody that he was 12 for 12. Every one of his catches turned into touchdowns. So I remember that
I'm
stuff.
sure
There
he
we go.
does.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah. Vrabel reminds someone of his accomplishments? Never. All right. What do you got? You got the next
Never.
question for us. What do you got? Yeah.
Okay, despite his Boston upbringing as a child, this Mike actually grew up a huge fan of Ken Griffey Jr. Boston
guess?
Mike? I mean, and this can be like any Mike, like any famous celebrity Mike,
Being a
not
Mike.
just football Mikes, correct? Just being Mikes.
Yeah.
A Mike that grew up in Boston. I have no idea. Who's
Yeah,
a big
I
Ken
don't
Griffey Jr.
know.
fan?
I don't know, but I'm gonna use logic here. Okay, like this is where I'm either the best or the worst because all I ever do is think logically. They gave us the first question about Mike Vrabel, right? So I'm just gonna guess that the second question is
Mike
a random factoid about Mike
McDonald?
McDonald. That's my guess. Let's see where we are. Mike
McDonald. What a Seattle suck up. He's not a
man,
Ken Griffey
that
Jr.
is,
fan growing up. He's just sucking up to the city of Seattle.
All right, the next one, yeah, I think I know this one too. This Mike owned 3 white Bengal tigers whose names were Kenya, Storm, and Boris. I don't really know this, but The Hangover is my favorite
Mike
movie of
Tyson.
all time. And when I think of Mike Tyson, yeah, it's got to be Mike Tyson, right? Like we're Mike Tyson.
It's
on
Mike
this one?
Tyson.
Oh,
Boom.
look at that! You're up next. I just crushed that one. We're on a roll. We're 3 for 3, baby.
Crushed it. Okay, this Mike is a passionate amateur meteorologist who geeks out over weather apps, forecasts, and storm patterns. I have no idea.
I have no idea. I have no
An
clue who
amateur
that would-
meteorologist?
like a storm
Thinking of
chaser
like
or
the
something,
movie
or just like
Twister?
I got nothing. I got nothing.
Time's up. Mike Trout.
Oh, Mike Trout. Mike Trout, amateur
I did not know
meteorologist. I had
this.
no idea. I had
All right, well, the more you know.
I had the more you know with the little rainbow. I had no idea. All right, let's get to the next one.
No idea.
The next one is mine. This Mike wrote and published an entire coffee table book called Canada 2012, where he personally curated photos and tributes to Canadian culture and history. I own this book. Mike Myers, Saturday Night Live. Right?
Mike
Like, that's his book, yeah.
Myers.
Yeah, I'm an
Is he
SNL
Canadian?
fanatic. I own this book. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That famous. If you've never seen the monologue for, I can't think of his name. My God, he wore a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey around it. They did a whole Canadian skit for it. Ryan, the
Love
really
it.
attractive Ryan with the great abs, was the host that day. I don't know. Go
Gosling?
ahead. You got the next one. Yeah. Gosling. Yeah, there we go. Gosling. I
Yeah,
didn't
he's hot.
remember Ryan Gosling. Yeah, he is.
Okay, this Mike bought a controlling stake at a 100-year-old Italian soccer club in 2016, a decision that ended in the club's bankruptcy and financial ruin. Mike, oh, thinking I'm Ted Lasso here. Is it the Mike? Is it the Mike from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Didn't he and Ryan Reynolds
no.
invest into a soccer club together?
No, that was Mike Piazza.
Mike Piazza.
Yeah.
Look at all of these
Mike
baseball
Piazza.
players with all these side quests that I did
Oh,
not
we
know
should have
about.
guessed that Mets. We got a Mets fan working on the show. We should have guessed that Josh was going to squeeze the Mets
True.
into this one. Come on, we failed on that one.
Always
What
finds a
about
way to get the Mets into these
I know.
things.
I mean, yeah, there we go. How about this one? This Mike uses utensils to consume every single meal and eating absolutely everything with a knife and fork, even pizza, burgers, and fries. That is very famous. My first ever national radio show at ESPN was filling in on Mike and Mike, sitting in Mike Greenberg's seat. That's Mike Greenberg. There's no Greeny through and through eats everything with a fork and knife, much to the chagrin of the Golick family. So yeah, 100%. I
didn't know
I'm
that,
my weight
but
here.
that makes
I am
so
pulling
much
my
sense.
weight.
I know. Actually, Fitz is way better at this game than I am. I'm learning all these things for the first time, but that makes so much sense. It really does. Okay, this next one. This Mike has his jersey retired by the Miami Heat, hanging in the rafters. I know this one. Michael Jordan.
There we go.
Thank
Like
you.
Mike,
Never
I
even
could be
played
like Mike.
for the Heat. Never even wore a Heat jersey, but there he is.
All right, I've got this Mike is a motivational speaker that openly talks about how difficult it was behind bars after having served time for theft, robbery, and kidnapping for ransom. I have no idea. I don't even. Yeah, I couldn't even begin to guess. I got nothing. Do you have anything on this one?
Jeez. Kidnapping for
Like a
ransom.
Mike that a prison mic? Prism? I don't know. The office. I was right.
Prison
Prison mic. That is prison mic. Come on, I get credit for that. Let's go. Prison
I didn't
mic.
know
never
the
thought we
crimes
would've
that Prison Mike committed. Wait,
Michael
they said
Scott
the
in a
scariest part
prison
of
mic.
this Mike's prison stay was the Dementors.
Oh my god!
I would have known that one.
Oh my god!
I would've
That
known
is
Prison Mike
electric.
there.
I think I get credit for prison
That
mic.
is
You're up next.
Awesome. You do get a lot of credit for that one because what a Hail Mary there. Okay. This Mike is now 58 years old, and it's hard to believe 40 years ago he was the 1985 Oklahoma High School Football Player of the Year.
Sometimes the context is in the way the clues are written by our team. We have a very smart team. They're very witty. All right. It's hard to believe that 40. Now, when I think famous Oklahoma football players,
my
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Mike Gundy. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Oh, look at
It's
that.
one of my favorite
Look at that.
college football moments of all time.
I feel like we have, like right now, if they were keeping score on this, we are absolutely annihilating trivia about Mike.
I would
so
say
Mike
you
Drop is
are,
going all
Fitz.
the way. Well, no, it's a team. We're a team. You know what? There's no I in
Thank
team,
you.
just an ME. Let's get to the next one. First one. All right. First came to the U.S. in 1999 with a ton of momentum and popularity. Now based out of Chicago, this Mike helped change the beverage industry forever. I have no idea. This first came to the U.S. in 1999 with a ton of momentum and popularity. Now based out of Chicago, this
Mike's Hard
helped
Lemonade?
change the beverage. No. Oh,
Mike's Hard Lemonade.
I didn't know we were doing products too. Prison Mike and Mike's Hard Lemonade made it into this thing. I feel like at some point, I don't know. I feel like at some point we deserve some extra credit for this.
Mike is like the most common name of all time. Did we really have to dig so deep to get to Mike's Hard Lemonade? But I do respect it. It's been a minute since I've had a Mike's Hard Lemonade, but
Now, Mike's Hard
delicious,
Lemonade is when
I'm
you
sure.
drink when you just turn 21.
Can't
because we
drink.
drink responsibility. Yeah. When you just turn 21, then you drink Mike's Hard Lemonade. Not a day before, but if you did before, not a day before. All right, I
of
had no
course.
clue on
Drink
that one.
responsibly.
Of course.
Okay,
Let's
last
get
one.
more. What do you got?
This Mike was caught on camera having the time of his life sitting front row in The Price is Right.
I know the actor from Breaking Bad, the younger one. Like I know he was on Price is Right as a contestant. So would that be? But I don't know his name. The Breaking Bad, like not
Is
the
his name
actual
Mike?
meth cooker, but the other. They're
Aaron
telling me that's
Paul.
Aaron Paul. That is not Mike. That's Aaron. That is
So
not
that's
Mike.
not
So
that
I got nothing on that one.
I'm just trying to
I
go
should have
through
remembered
every
Aaron Paul.
Mike that I could possibly think of in my head.
I got nothing. All right, let's see what they got. Oh, Mike Goldfarb. Mike Goldfarb our producer extraordinaire sitting in the front row. Is that what we're doing here?
Way.
Goldfarb was in the front row of Price is Right?
Goldfarb was going to be involved in this some way, shape, or form. I just did not realize that Mike had the time of his life sitting front row at The Price is Right. How did we not know this?
The next-
Producer Mike Goldfarb.
I got to find out about everything about this experience. B, did he actually get on stage as a
Truly.
contestant? And C, who would have known that the next coach of the Cleveland Browns was actually in the front row of a Price is Right taping? I mean, I'm amazed by it. And
Mike looks
the
like a
guy
baby.
In front of him Mike is also cheering him on so hard. Like, I love this. Like, look at that support. Look at that support. Mike's buddies cheering him on. Like, that's the
teammate.
sort of support that's, I mean, this is just, this has been electric. Who knew that we could get so many weird things fit into one segment about the name Mike? That's what only this show does for you every single day. We'll be back tomorrow right here at 9 a.m. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for hanging out with us. Tell your friends, family, and everybody to hang out with us tomorrow. Come back. See us again. Have a great day.
Give us your breakout fighters of 2026.
You're not going to believe that. Number one is Manchester top teams, Atiba Gutierrez. I think he's going to be the next big African star already is.
He's chiseled out of stone. He's got unbelievable power, great skill, huge for the weight class. Very, very impressive. And again, you speak to the guys over at Manchester Top Team, they could not be more excited about his potential.
Usually I would dunk on a team that's 8-9 going to the playoffs. You don't deserve it. For Carolina, celebrate it. This was a big step forward season. However you got there, you wanted some hope. You wanted something to be happy about. You backed into it, fine. I don't care. The Panthers did have some quality wins this year. They did seem to be making progress. So for the Panthers, hey, step forward, good job, celebrate it. It's a really nice year for the Carolina Panthers to win this division no matter how they did it.
I don't know how anyone could expect Kalen DeBoer to get Alabama back to where Nick Saban had it, because he's not going to. I would suggest to you that had Nick Saban stuck around at Alabama, he wasn't getting Alabama back to where Nick Saban had it a decade prior. And that's Nick literal Saban. I don't think Kirby Smart's getting Georgia back to what Georgia was a few years ago. Dabo's not going to get Clemson back to what Clemson was. It's almost like the entire world has changed.
Oh, let's get to another factory of sadness. The Atlanta Falcons, who fired Raheem Morris after 2 8-9 seasons.
You got Bijan Robinson, you got Drake London. That was what Raheem Morris said when they asked him, why did you take this job?
Yep.
And you still got those guys. And you still got those two guys.